Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Schaefer, and I'm here presenting today on how social media influences views on race. Just a quick little introduction from me about why I chose this topic, that sort of thing. For me, this topic is very personal as somebody who is mixed race and in the marketing field. I would like to see a whole lot more research done into this. I think it's an untapped avenue, like it has a lot of untapped potential in the marketing field, and I don't think that a whole lot of marketers or companies really give thought to how their social media content, how what they post is going to influence the greater society's view on race and individuals' view on race as well. So I believe that the research on it, we definitely need to do a better job of it. So I'm hoping my presentation today provides some insight into this under research topic. So social media, we've seen it just absolutely explode here in recent years in terms of its influence, how seriously it's being taken in the public eye, specifically with political and social movements in the last couple of years. Most notably, Donald Trump's successful 2016 presidential campaign was spurred on by social media, as we can see here from this graph from Social Flow. How Donald Trump kind of took over the political discussion regarding the 2016 campaign with social media primarily. Social media played a huge part in his success, and many other political campaigns have tried to mirror this to little prevail. And then more recently with the George Floyd murder, how that kind of revived, well, I don't want to say revived, but it definitely amped up Black Lives Matter's traction in the public eye, kind of brought that social movement to the attention of the entire nation. And social media played a huge part in its success, being able to document that kind of police brutality. And even more recently with Amir Locke, we're seeing that social media is offering a way to see that sort of things in ways that weren't available before. Because you think about the previous decades, how they got news is primarily, by newspaper, by radio, that sort of thing, and that stuff can be kind of skewed. But with social media, we're seeing such a raw take on these events, and we're seeing them pretty much as they happen, which is entirely unique to social media. It's entirely unique to our generation, so it's important to do some research on it. But since it is so recent, there's not a whole lot of research on it, like I said in the introduction. But with the passing of the Patriot Act back in the waning days of the November 11th attack, the September 11th attack, sorry, my bad. With the passing of the Patriot Act, that was whenever I think society started really taking the internet seriously, and social media started regulating and viewing social media posts under a more critical lens, because anything could happen on there. I think the September 11th attacks were the moment where the government was like, oh, this needs to be taken seriously. They were planning this right under our noses and we had no idea. And even back then, they didn't really take it as seriously as we're seeing today, with the government scrambling, just trying to figure out a way to regulate online hate and that sort of thing. So the Patriot Act was really the birth of the internet in the public eye. And then several excellent studies have been done under this kind of topic. The hashtag neurotic racism study done by the Journal of Psychology offers a great look into, like in the past, how tweets specifically influence public discussion on social issues. With this one specifically, it was talking about the Michael Brown murder and the in the waning days of the trial, the Ferguson riots. So, sorry. It talked about the unrest that followed and tweets regarding the unrest. It talked about the split between, anti-racism, people advocating for justice, and the other side kind of just dismissing it, pointing the finger at other things. So that study really, a lot of the conversation actually mirrored the stuff that was happening during George Floyd, which I think was very interesting. And a Pew Research Center post talks about the importance of Black Twitter, how African Americans are more likely to post online And then an experiment done by the University of Miami shows the real life consequences of this kind of online political expression that African Americans tend to lean towards. As during their experiment, they tested how job hiring HR people kind of view that kind of expression. So they gave several participants some job materials from two different African Americans, exact same resumes, exact same portfolios, that sort of thing. But for one of them, they gave them a printout of their social media feed, and one was politically active, the other one wasn't. But the one that was politically active was viewed as way more negative, or like was less likely to get a job, that sort of thing. So that kind of shows the real world consequences of political expression online, which is very important, as we'll see here in just a little bit. So our methodology for this survey, our hypothesis was that social media would yield a great impact on perceptions of race and social issues. This was kind of formed based on my prior knowledge of social media, how subliminally it can trick us into supporting different issues, that sort of thing. And in order to prove this, we sent out a 20-minute... I keep saying we, it's just me. We sent out a 20-item survey to 33 participants, or we got 33 participants that filled it out. It was an open survey, meaning the link was sent to like Discord, GroupMe's, that sort of thing. So yeah. So these are the results. The survey was really split into two different sections. Talk about frequency, like how frequently do you do stuff, and then just yes or no questions. So these are the results from the frequency questions. As you can see, leaning towards mostly like middle of the road kind of answers here. So how frequently do you post about social media movements online? Majority don't. How often do you seek info on social movements via social media? Sometimes led in that. How often do you interact with people of your own race on these sites? Very often there, while it was mixed results on other races. And then how often do you experience or observe discrimination online? Very mixed opinions there, but sometimes leading on that question. So. And then on the second section, has social media affected how you interact with people of your own race? No leading on that. Other races, no leading on that. Very similar results on both of these, which I thought was very interesting. And then, has social media affected your view of your own race? So instead of how you interact, your view, very much mixed, way more mixed, or way more even responses here, and then positive effects leading versus negative effects. And then your view of races, same sort of balance we're seeing here, but way more positive. But we'll talk about that in just a second. Then your opinion of a social issue. This one is kind of the one that I use. Oh, I'll talk about that in a little bit. Sorry, but no, people weren't as affected on social issues as I thought. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Now, as we're discussing this stuff, as you saw from the results, the consensus points to, or just the raw, if you're looking at it for the first time, you can see that students aren't as affected by social media as we first thought. They're able to more differentiate between the two and kind of disconnect them, as one survey done suggests. That survey kind of talked about how students weigh in-person interactions of hate versus online, and they weighed in-person interactions of hate way more heavily, which I wish we asked questions about in the survey, but it wasn't something that we really thought about at the time. But something that we saw from the explanations, which we'll talk about here in just a second, was that social media does, however, serve as a powerful role in the process of reinforcing ideologies. We see terms like pipelines and rabbit holes used to describe the process that individuals go through whenever they're, just consuming a little bit of media, and then they go further and then further. And with individual curations of social media that all major social media platforms have, that can lead to some individuals, unfortunately getting or accidentally being put into kind of echo chambers almost, just hearing their own ideologies repeated back at them, which is why we're seeing such a huge increase in like polarization, I believe. Responses can be kind of put into two different groups. Group one itself can be put into two groups itself. Category one is the unswayed. Multiple participants were kind of, giving middle of the road responses like, I'm not swayed by this, social media doesn't impact me, that sort of thing. And a problem that we had with this was that people were copy and pasting their explanations from question to question, and a lot of them were from this because they were just unwavering, did not want their opinions changed, that sort of thing. And then category two is the politically inactive. I put inactive in quotation marks there because even though they said that they weren't politically inactive, several of them indicated that social media had positively influenced their view of other cultures because they're able to expose themselves to that. And this kind of, I almost put this category over in group two, but they had answered this question negatively, so they didn't have their opinion swayed by a social issue, yet they kind of viewed other races more positively, view social media, which I thought was really interesting. And with that theme of exposure, that's entirely what group two answered. A lot of their answers kind of sided with, exposure to either, good things or bad things kind of influence their views on social issues, especially. Some of them quoted, social media had exposed them to like the worst that their race had to offer, which further influenced their biases, that sort of thing. So this really shows the impact of exposure, how exposure can kind of skew people's views of societal issues depending on what kind of content they're seeing. And a lot of that is up to, the social media platforms, which has gotten them a lot of heat as well for wanting to skew users one way or the other. And this is just a little bit more on exposure. This is a series that I personally really like, Middle Ground. It's just really interesting conversations, but this one specifically has to do with the importance of exposure. So
I know all schools, they don't talk about some deep topics that social media brings to light, and it teaches you how to get through it and how to do it without talking to your family if you are uncomfortable, and without talking to the school, because sometimes schools don't have that education in place.
My teacher told everyone that RuPaul's Drag Race was a good example of trans people. Of course, I got in trouble for correcting him or whatever, but it was I could not let him spread fake information like that, because those are not trans people, those are drag queens, and that is a totally different topic. I'm very far in my transition for 16, and social media definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah. And then the fact that you even got in trouble for that shows that school is they're lacking.
Personal experience is how you learn the most. You go on social media and there's someone talking about this eating disorder, this depression that they went to. It's just someone actually talking to a camera, giving you real advice that a school really could never do.
So going along with that thread, they talked a lot about that importance of getting that exposure, because you're not going to get that kind of exposure from other sources like school, that sort of thing. So that is a really big positive that people in favor of social media's implementation in society have, is that it exposes people beyond what they just experience in real life. So basically this kind of supports the idea that social media, though people don't weigh it as heavily, the areas that it does exceed versus real life, it really does exceed it. So just a couple limitations on our survey. It was done in a time crunch. I was going through a lot of stuff middle of the semester that I had no real control over, so a lot of the survey was put together, last minute, distributed last minute, unfortunately. But I thought the findings were actually very worthwhile. Another thing is that it was an open survey. We weren't able to really control how much time people had to answer the questions, really think about them, that sort of thing. And truly, it's impossible to really quantify or qualify the depth of perception that one person might have. One participant may have more knowledge about social media's subliminal influence over another. And then ultimately, these are all self-reported, so some of them may not truly show what that person believes. So, but I believe that the insights that this survey offers are really worthwhile and really important to the field. So, thank you so much.